The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living the lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, our National Grand Sheik and myself will present De Facto Courts, case laws deemed null and void. But before we start, please be sure to like and share and subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so. Welcome to tonight's broadcast. Greetings.
Islam, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum, Vadimakum, Bon Abort. Dr. G.
Yes.
We see, and as you know, that the world is changing quite rapidly now, even to the degree that many of the people who are experiencing both social, political, and economic problems from the so-called pseudo-religious organizations to pseudo-government down to the pseudo-economics. And many people are a bit confused and don't necessarily know or have a clear direction on how they should manage or navigate their lives. One of the reasons why we're discussing the issue of de facto courts is because the fact that the governing body is de facto. And as we know, there's thousands of people in the listening audience that comprehend and understand and comprehend what has happened at North America in order for persons who wanted to maintain slavery or forced servitude instituted the imaginary split or division of the Whigmore Party at Philadelphia with the 1854 convention headed by Horace Greeley, the New York newspaper tycoon. And I know that many people know about the development of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party operating civil jurisdiction on the land at North America. But many of them don't know that that whole platform was actually an engineered, what you would call false flag, to give the people the illusion or to present the illusion that the Republic constitutional government operating on the land at North America via Constitution and Treaty was intact and going through some small anomalies relative to the secured rights of the people and of the Aboriginal people here in accord with Ordinance of 1787 and according with the superseding Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is known as the Mother Treaty of the Treaties of the Indigenous People, that are generally referred to as the Indie people or the indigenous people of the land, i.e., the true Americans, distinguished from the corporate, or what you would call the visiting, and many of the alien hybrid Europeans that found political powers through the Whigmore Party and actually had conspired to overthrow the legitimate republic government, i.e., coming from constitutional law, securing the trade routes and the international interchanging and interfacing that has been established law for the land. And as you all know, via Article 3 of the Constitution for the United States and for the States United, and the Constitution for the United States, States United, Article 6, and Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, for the preservation of that republic order. And many people who don't know or didn't know that the fiction of the Republican Party being known as the Conscience Whigs and the fiction of the Kaiklos Order of the Grand Protectors of the Christian Creed known as Ku Klux Klan, which becomes the Cotton Whigs that you know as Ku Klux Klan, comprises the two major or ruling monopoly parties appearing to be competitors operating civil jurisdiction on the land at North America, in contradistinction to the Republic Order of the Constitution for the United States, known as the Republican and Democratic Party, which are really in secret, not secret, but in the veiled, in their actual veiled operation, Conscience Whigs and Cotton Whigs, who have never really split or divided, but actually through the convention of 1854 created the false platform of quote unquote free elections in the actual veiled takeover and overthrow of the republic. And to give now, many of you out there who are political scholars and political scientists, etc., already know this information. And many of you who are members of any of the generally known, some will be named, some will not, secret societies that operate on the land at North America. And many of you who've made the trips down to Independence Hall at Philadelphia, down to Carpenter's Hall, Oddfellows, etc., are well aware of this information. However, we're sharing this information with many people who are awakening to this information and have some limited background, although we know that there's millions, a couple millions of Americans, Aboriginals, who by culture are very aware of this information. And we're aware of a lot of the hybrid European middle class people who are citizens of the corporate United States operating on the land, who also support the preservation of treaties and the Constitution for the United States, who are now exposing some of that history to the people and are less believed by many of the people who are still under the spell of the Whigmore Party split of 1854 with the delusion of the two-party system, which was actually a ploy for the cover-up of the overthrow, which has been operating on the land, particularly since 1871, officially with the Organic Act of Congress, 1871, and unofficially with the few years prior to their planned assassination of Abraham Lincoln, with the purpose of overthrowing the republic. So this is why, for those who know some of the history, why right after they assassinated Abraham Lincoln, that Ulysses Grant modified or alter the Naturalization Act of 1870 later, so that you can put these things in context for your comprehension of who and what you're dealing with in the name of government. Again, we're dealing with also some case laws on the de facto court system derived from that de facto government operations in order to help many who have been injured by some of their highwaymen known as the Gangs of New York, also known as a fraternal order of the police who were in order, who were initiated in contract actually to help maintain the destabilization of the indigenous people, and also to maintain the power structure of the private corporation for the United States company operations on the land in their de facto operations, so that you can look at things that you see every day from a more realistic perspective. And also for many of your family members who have been injured, assassinated, sacrificed, whose families have been broken up by virtue of policy intrusions by members of the de facto corporation operations of the United States Corporation Company, who didn't know that the governing bodies and their subcontractors are all de facto, and particularly since 1871, when that was their coming out party. Let's make this very clear. The de facto operations started in around 1860, and absolute after they assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Then, with that 10-year span, with their secret meetings of Privy Council, and then coming out of the closet, that was your Organic Act of Congress, 1871. And this where you see the propagation of what you commonly hear today as the quote unquote US democracy, i.e., that is another tag phrase for the overthrow or the actually the devised deception of the appearance of the split of the Whigmore Party of 1854 at the Philadelphia Convention, and with the hybrid Europeans by agreement and vote taking on the nobility claim of the land through the title that you hear of, known as the law title, free white persons. Write that down so that you can go to your Bouvier's Law Dictionary and to your Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition and below, and have a clearer understanding as to why the hybrid Europeans since 1854 officially began to call themselves white people. It's a political operation. Understand that has nothing to do with the genetic concepts that people take it as being. It is actually a political move, a de facto political move. And so one of the reasons I'm putting this in perspective, because many of the things that have been taking place around the world, many of the hybrids here at North America have instituted many hegemony attacks to preserve their hegemony on the people of the land here, with targeted assassinations, as well as people from around the world in other political jurisdictions. That has much to do with, as an example, the Manchurian families at what you call corporate China, counseling as of this week over $155 billion machine operation contracts with Nippon, that you call Japan, because of Japan's tie with under the subjugation operation since World War II, being a proxy for the United States Corporation Company against China. And so China counseled over $155 billion machine contract. Also, they counseled 150 some odd billion contract with German car companies just a week before. And all of these are in reflections of the hegemony operations that have been going on against Asia and African people, particularly enforced or accelerated since the 1800s, and is manifesting itself on the political realm. However, many of our people here being denied, as you already know, of a proper civic education, and also being protected from outside world information, not knowing that the information coming to them has been deliberately filtered in order to preserve the hegemony, are not aware or may be confused about many of the political moves that are made. And go ahead.
Can you define, for those who may not know, what a hegemony is?
All right. Hegemony operations is the reality, is the political reality of the operations of alien Europeans that took over the Maghreb, that you call the Morocco, the most extreme West, which is written in the history books as Columbus discovering America. That's the cover story. The real story is the overthrow of the Moroccan Empire, particularly reinforced since the mid 1800s, and is expressed in history with some of the distortion referred to as British Morocco, French Morocco, etc., Spanish Morocco. You'll hear those three terms, or that trinity operations. And what that is really the agreement where the hybrid Europeans in agreement, and you'll find a lot of that information in the Treaty of Paris, etc., Treaty of Verona. And this is where they divided up the Moroccan Empire among themselves and made agreements to maintain the hegemony operations of the unum sanctum operations of the Pope of Rome and the Dom Diversus Romanus Pontifex operations, and headed with the cover political platform known as the Doctrine of Discovery. And all of this has been presented to indigenous people with the diversion narrative, which you all know, with the Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach phenotype operations, hidden under the veil of what is commonly presented to the masses as quote unquote racism and prejudice, which is really a cover for the Doctrine of Discovery operations to enforce the unum sanctum and the Dum Diversus operations at the Western Hemisphere under European colonial operations, under the military operations known as Columbus discovering America, which is a military operation, not so much a man. Now, all people that belong to any of your secret societies like Kaiklos, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Oddfellow, Kaiklos Ku Klux Klan, Daughters of the American Revolution, Daughters of ISIS, etc., Freemasons, etc., Illuminati, all of them have, beyond their 18th degree, this knowledge that we're sharing with you today. They are not delusional about the real politics. However, the general masses are delusional about the real politics, which is why you'll see many of the common people, when they're talking about the economics and the political problems operating in the Western Hemisphere, they will refer to quote unquote East-West conflict rather than Oriental Occidental conflict, which is what you're actually seeing. Keep this in mind. What you're looking at in reality is Occidental conquest of Oriental lands and peoples. That's under the reconstructed operations known as Columbus discovering America 1492. That's a code for military operations of hybrid Europeans conquering the Moorish Empire, dividing it up among themselves, making agreement to maintain that conquest under English, what you call British Morocco, French Morocco, Spanish Morocco, etc. And after that, all of your major political jurisdictions or national tribes in Kemet that you know as Africa on the other side began to fall. And you'll see a series of operations of them dividing up among themselves the operations in Kemet on the other side. So the first conquest was here at the Maghreb, known as Morocco, the most extreme west. And this is why you will see in that period of time, after mid-1800s, how all of the political jurisdictions at Kemet that you know as Africa today on the other side, which is not, it's just a part of the provinces and part of the kingdoms of Morocco, etc. You'll see them dividing up among themselves, and even some of the politics that you see today with Niger, etc., and Gabon, secondary, which is not so much in the news right now, and other political jurisdictions in Kemet starting to come together to rid themselves of the hegemony operations in the Trinity operations of the United States Corporation, France, the Franciscan Brotherhood, Germany, etc. You'll see them as of late kicking out the ambassador of France because they've been stealing logically the uranium and the gold, and they've been operating. They're doing their part for the hegemony operations for this last century or so. And this is the real truth behind the operations of France, i.e. political jurisdiction being in Niger, including the recent coup that you see that has taken place. And then you'll see the response of Russia and of China counseling large sums in the billions of contracts with Nippon, Japan, who's been a proxy for the United States Corporation operations, and for Germany. And also, you will find that the Manchurian families stopped all exports of many of your what is called rare earth operations. And so expect to see your major car dealers here or car manufacturers in the Western Hemisphere all of a suddenly stop or justify that they're no longer going to be making or continuing their investment in electric power cars. And the real deal is because the sanctions that the hegemony operators of the Circle Church and Chancery and the Jesuits have put on China and Russia, their counter move has been to cancel a lot of the contracts that they've had with many of the corporations and other proxy nation states like Nippon, who have been a proxy for the United States Corporation Company after they were conquered and subdued. And so they had been by default operating as pawns against anyone that countered the hegemony. So the hegemony has been told to you over these last 100 and some years as loosely, and this is what you would call the controlled narrative, white supremacy. So what you have known as the white supremacy is a fictional cover for the hegemony operations of Unum Sanctum. So the hegemony is actually the real operations. White supremacy is the tag word or phrase given to the masses to maintain the narrative for the people to think that they're dealing with an attitude, not knowing that they're dealing with an established operation of war that never ended, but given different names and given different operations. And this is again why you will find that when you're looking at world governments and world international operations, you'll see that the continued wars that you see initiated under the de facto government known as the United States has been in operation. And not until recent years Have you had any what you'll call serious counter move to stop the unum sanctum operations? And this is the foundation of the real politics that is not talked about in the mainstream news. Now, again, while I repeat again, while we're now I'm qualifying that, and while we're sharing some of these cases, this is for many of you, particularly indigenous people here, whose families will be heavily impacted because the hybrid Europeans are doing what they would call intimidation sacrifices. So they will be killing women and men in rituals, and they will do it in numbers like wolf gangs in order to intimidate the people for anyone that is enforcing constitutional or international law issues. And so when you see them being attacked or sacrificed, understand that the issue is a signal coming from the hybrids to protect their hegemony, because they want to intimidate the people and they do not want you to exercise what you would call rights. And this has much to do with the shadow banning, has much to do with the gender bender agenda under the operations of encroachment of Rex 84, King Alfred programming manual to maintain the hegemony, etc. So all of these things and none of these things are accidental. They're all tied to the hegemony operations, which is really the maintenance of the colonial operations of unum sanctum in the Western Hemisphere. That's the fact. So we're sharing this information. This is so that we're giving or aiding some of the people who don't understand the real politics to have some foundation of knowledge of them both not blindly supporting de facto government, and also not being surprised at the obvious corruption that is being unmasked, and also not having a misunderstanding or miscomprehension, thinking that the corrupt things that you're seeing and the abuses that you see coming from these people, that it is not accidental. It's a counter move or presentments from operatives, or what you call field operatives, to maintain fear and intimidation over the occupied people, so that they will go back into their mental sleep of not countering the de facto government. So a lot of the abuses that you will see them doing on multiple levels have that as a root. Now, when we're dealing, many of you who know jurisprudence, if we would present to you what is known as stare decisis law and res judicata, which you know that we mentioned here and there over the years, many of you who know civics are quite familiar with those law terms. But the conversation tonight is for many people who are awakening, but are still in the dark about the real politics. This is to help them and their families. So we'll give you some reference points so that you can do your own research and clear up a lot of misconceptions that you probably do have and didn't know that you have. You know, like one of the things that you've often said, Dr. G, and this is with many people don't know that they don't know. And so this is another reason we're sharing this. We know that there's thousands of people that have, shared with us over the years and who come on the House of Reawakening Minds who are well grounded in civics, but we still know that a large number of the people are still denied fundamental erudition in civics. And this is another reason why we're sharing these. So I'm going to go to law book and read to you what de facto government is, so that you will have a clear comprehension of what's being said to you, so that you can come back to a reasonable and a more logical position with your own thought processes, and also assist you and give you ancillary to help you in your studies to start redeeming your own family's estate as well as your own, and have a better comprehension as to why these things are said by us over the years and how they actually relate to you. Meaning that on another level, a repeat, many people didn't know that they don't know. And so we're trying to help some of the people that didn't know that they didn't know. Here we go. Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence. That is for some of you. And for some of you, Bouvier's Encyclopedia of Law, etc. So these will give you two of your major sources of your world's best known and qualifying law dictionaries that are known by all politicians, all people in secret societies, scholars, professors, general researchers and historians, but not generally shared with the general public, as the general public is referred to among them as quote unquote food, and also refer to them as the dead. With all due respect, that what I just said is the truth. And so we want to bring some awakening to the dead and taking some of their food off the table. De facto government, law. This is law. De facto government is a government that maintains itself by a display of force against the will of rightful, legal, or constitutional government, and is successful, at least temporarily, this whatever the time period may be, in overturning the institutions of the rightful legal government by setting up itself in its own lien thereof. And for those who want to do some research in law to reaffirm what I just presented to you, look at Wortham versus Walker, 133, Texas, 255, 128, SW, second edition, 130, 1138, and 1145. So keep that in mind. So write those things down. And for those who forget, go back over the video later on. Write these things down. This will give you reference points so that you don't have to believe anything that we tell you. This will give you reference so that you can start liberating your own mind and start liberating yourself politically, because you're going to need it. Because as we told you before, and I'll tell you again right now, that many of you who have bank accounts don't know that there are other bank accounts in the name of you that you didn't know of. And this is how one of the methods that the local and what you consider national politicians have been laundering finance in your name, contrary to what you knew or even know. And because a lot of their private debts are being called in other nation states, where they have less what you call direct control, although they have proxy controls, it's getting out of hand and difficult for them to continue to cover up the fact that the politicians here have been robbing the people for decades, that they're going to be stealing your accounts as we speak, as we told you before. And for those who didn't understand or know or have an idea, why is it that we have been pressing for these people to take their fiat out of the banks, is to try to give you a one-up so that you can start saving yourselves. Remember, we can't make people deal with the truth. Sometimes the truth has to smack them in the face with two boards, front and back at the same time. And this is happening to the people now. So you recognize what's happening to you when you start seeing these fake, these so-called banks calling people or sending letters in the mail, which many of you shall be getting, if you haven't already gotten them, shall be getting them soon, particularly since some of these contracts have been nullified by China and Russia, that they can't hide it anymore. So they're going to blame it on inflation, which is actually their own creation to rob the people continuously. And because they are not going to be able to continue to hide it, they will tell you that there's glitches in the computers, and that's why your accounts have gotten hacked. And also for those who didn't know it, you need to know now one of the reasons why they have promoted in the last decade Alexa in your houses is because the reality is that they've been gathering data and information on you without having to investigate you, and you have given them information, and they built dossiers on everything that comes through. And they also have a feature that most people aren't even aware of, that they can call back to Alexa and actually have a record of your everyday lives in your homes. If you didn't know that, know it now. And understand that they're going to be stealing or accelerating stealing from you because they're not going to be able to satisfy their liabilities. So now that you understand de facto government, and for those of you, you can go to your Bouvier's law book, and in your Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, it will be on page 504. 504. And at the top of the page, you'll see deed and estoppel, etc. So by deed, estoppel will be at your top page. The number page will be 504. Now let's get into a couple of case laws to give you concept of what's been operating here on the land against the people, and the people didn't know it, and the politicians aren't going to tell you because they are part of the operations of Unum Sanctum membership, and because they're de facto. The fact that you thought they were your government is problematic only relative to you not knowing what was actually going on. Again, which is why we're sharing this. So, de facto court. De facto court is a court which was established by statute, apparently valid, which has organized with a judge appointed, and his or her has exercised authority as a court. Authority as a court. Burt versus R Company, 31, Minnesota, 472, 18N, W.285, 289, page 766. A de facto court cannot exist by virtue of a statute under a written constitution which ordains one Supreme Court and defines the qualification and duties of its judges and prescribes the mode of appointing them. The attempt of the legislature to abolish the Constitutional Court of Appeals and establish a new one was ineffectual to create either a de facto or de jure court for want of legislative power. That's Hildreth and Ayers versus McIntyre's Devicey, IJJ, Marsh, Kentucky, 206, 19 a.m., December 61, page 765.
766.
Say it again.
66.
766. I apologize. That was a misread. Page 766. De facto judge is one duly elected, qualified, and acting as such under conditions on which one might be properly appointed, but who fail to comply with some necessary act to qualify him or her as taking the oath of office. State versus Miller. There must be a duly constituted office and a vacancy therein before the election or appointment. Caldwell versus Barnett. That would be on page 766. one has recognized as a de facto judge, though the statute under which he or she was appointed was unconstitutional and void when the office was originally created under a valid law. That's Walcott versus Wells. That's Nevada. And when the incumbent was ill and an acting judge was appointed, qualified, assumed the duties, and the public acquiesced, he was held to be a de facto judge. That's Bredia versus Bache. Those are just examples. Now, in relationship to the cases or the case laws on jurisdiction, as you already know, whenever there's a controversy, first issue before the court or before the people in law is one, status, then jurisdiction / venue, then adjudication. And as you all know, and keep notes, all of those processes which are established law are commonly breached every day, and they've packed their private, for-profit POW camps in your local municipal jails and your state prisons, all of which are de facto. 99% of them have no constitutional grounds to even exist. And so all of you whose family members have been held in these POW camps, these laws or cases can be referenced for you to go after any and all persons claiming to be government and who knowingly are actually organized criminals, and they have been that for a century. But you didn't know that you didn't know. This is why a lot of things that you see them doing now, sending out gangs from the members of New York in the name of law officers and murdering people in their houses, men and women, and in their cars to intimidate people, to make them submit to the hegemony operations, because they're now being threatened by the BRICS operations of nation states around the world, because the people here have been totally disarmed and have no means of defense to protect themselves, their rights, or their estates, or their families. And so the civilized world are coming together to kill the treasury bonds, which they have created on the backs of the Aboriginal people here at North America, and have used all proceeds to create what they call a defense fund. This is why the largest funding of operations of the de facto government is called the Defense Department. And the defense contracts, all of your politicians have what you call rotationary operations within them, because they're all members of the Circle Church and Chancery, and they've been systematically draining, or what you would call stealing all the resources with the intention of neutralizing the people when the people became aware or would become aware of the de facto operations. And it appears that the general masses not only were not aware, but even though there's evidence that was available, they didn't believe it. So the politics that you see taking place on the planet with the other nation states are totally related to what I just presented to you. And these are case laws on jurisdictions. And you'll find this in Bouvier's Encyclopedia of Law, etc. too. Original jurisdiction is that bestowed upon a tribunal in the first instance. That will be page 1761. Jurisdiction of the person is that obtained by the appearance of the defendant before the tribunal. Bissell versus Briggs. That would be page 1761. Territorial jurisdiction is the power of the tribunal considered with reference to the territory within which it is to be exercised. That's also Bissell versus Briggs. And that would be found on page 1761. These particular references will be in your Bouvier's Encyclopedia of Law. Juris et de jure. Juris et de jure, Latin, means of right and by law. The presumption is said to be juris et de jure when it is conclusive, i.e., when no evidence will be admitted to rebut it, in contradistinction to be a presumed, which is simply juris, i.e., rebuttable by evidence. Reference: Green, EV, note, Willis, circa, evidence, or 29, best press, 20, subsection 17, best EV 43, page 1780, or 1760, Juris et season et conjunctio. Juris et season et conjunctio, Latin, the union of season or possession and the right of possession forming a complete title. Now,
it seems like that might be season, like they're seizing.
Yes.
As opposed to
and also right of claim.
Right. So seizure of property.
Yes.
Yes.
And remember, many of you who, for sake of having lost property under the guise of tax liens, know that you were wrongfully at law robbed. They had no authority to do so. And this is why you see many of the persons that have established many of your recent corporations, large corporations, are multi-billionaires. And this is why many of all of the politicians operating at North America, from local to state to federal, have gone into those offices, etc., with moderate levels of finance that shortly become millionaires and multi-millionaires. This is why they have amassed that masses of finance, because they are de facto and the masses didn't know it. So the inside trading operations of both the stock market and corporate operations, and with the so-called defense budget, is actually an operation of slush funds. This is the reason why, again, you'll see some of the controversy that's going on right now in Maui, as an example. There's a whole story behind that you need to research too, which is another land grab, and also an operation of them stealing of IE with their unum sanctum operations since the late 1800s, etc. So keep in mind, their so-called defense budget and why it's so large, and their rotation between the politicians operating at North America and all your defense contractors, etc. That's the truth of the relationship of the Whittemore Party operations ever since 1854, and that's where they've amassed their wealth.
So we're talking about, when you talk about the defense contractors,
yes, all of them.
We're talking about companies like Halliburton, and all of those that have
BlackRock, all of them,
a part of the economic hitman.
All of them.
Yeah.
Remember, all of their operations are hidden behind LLCs, and this is why they get people in the habit of dealing with what you would call your live dead personage with the corporations, where they'll always say, well, the state did this and the government did that, and the city did that, to keep you from paying attention or doing a tracer to see the persons who own that corporate entity, so that you can start talking about the dead corporation and you never see the face. But whenever anyone does any research whatsoever, this is why you'll find that the board of directors on all of your major corporate operations, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, you'll see a continuum of the same names or family names, and here and there, as some of them leave by what you call corporate secession, then you'll see some new names, etc., of persons, but you'll see a common line of same family names because these are actually Circle Church and Chancery operatives of the Unum Sanctum operators under the Organic Act of Congress 1871 and a continued what you'll call corporate secession. And this is why you will find when you do the research a bevy of bankruptcies of the United States and then a reoperation of that corporation with new what you call corporate successors. And this is one of the reasons why we, in our conversation, have shown you the corporation papers of the United States Corporation Company with its representation of reincorporation at 1925 at Florida to show you the pattern, etc., so that you can become more astute of comprehending that that is not the legitimate republic government, yet a private corporation or conglomeration of corporations. And this is why the politicians always rule in favor of the corporations to the injury of the people. And then they do what you will call debt ceiling as a disguise to create debt, to actually steal from the people. But they'll do it under the guise of defense contractors and then charge the bill to the people in general, including the Aboriginal people who are not to be taxed under the guise of the national debt. This is what you see going on. Then for those who are in the area of Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, pay attention to all your outskirt areas of that area, and you'll see new and large complexes of mansions being built, and 90% of them belong to defense contractors. And even the operations that you see going on in Ukraine at the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people is really to keep that machinery operating, because this is where all of the politicians known as the Western Bloc really get their finance, and they use the defense contractors as a filter for their money laundering. And it has never been in the interest of, quote unquote, the American people, and particularly not in the interest of the true American people, who are the copper complexion people who have been trained under the Unum Sanctum operations to think that human beings are crayons. And you'll hear them using catchphrases like light-skinned black people and black-skinned orange people and black-skinned white people and white-skinned black people. When you hear them using those terms, you know that they're under the Unum Sanctum mind control operations of the phenotype genetic genocide relative to countering right of estate through the escheat processes that are used by the corporate state operators and owners. So remember, when you hear those terms, know that these people really don't know that they're absolutely using anti-right of estate language, not knowing that they are. For the moment, Dr. G, would you have anything to add to that?
I do not. I do not.
All right. Now, let's go into a little bit more so that you will be aware of actually what you're dealing with. And as I mentioned, we'll go to the congressional records in the Senate. This is the 64th Congress, first session, volume 53, page 7, page 67. Pardon me, that's part 7, page 6781, 25th of April, 1916. Now, keep in mind, this is 3 years after they met on Jekyll Island, and of course, a decade or so more after they genocided many of our people off the island and stole much of the gold, and then built their little compound to have their privy council to set up the Jesuit order and the members of the Circle Church and Chancery who met there with Woodrow Wilson, who was praetor for the United States Corporation Company. This was 3 years before, and so this is their agreement 3 years after. And remember, this is the congressional record, because remember, what you're going to get from politicians from your what you call local, municipal, state, and federal have always pretended not to know this information. And many of them have also paid trolls to come on to this site and other sites to try to rebut or to distort or to discredit the information that we've been sharing with you over the years. But again, in spite of their counter moves with the trolls, we have been able to get through to some of the people. And also recognize, because of the massive COINTELPRO operations to counter this information, this is another help coming from China, Russia, Hindustan, Sinda, that you call India, that's Sinda, Brazil, and now starting to come from some of your African countries that are now countering the Franciscan Brotherhood operations of colonial operations from there. This is their congressional records. Senate, I wish to put into the record the secret Treaty of Verona of November 22, 1822. So you see, these operations go back to 1822. But this goes into their record, 1916, at North America. Showing what this ancient conflict, this is why you got to know history, because the war never ended, in between the rule of the few and the rule of the many. And I wish to call attention to the Senate of this treaty, because it is the threat of this treaty which was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. So when you look at the Monroe Doctrine, keep in mind, when you look into congressional records later with Senator Bilbo, and also with them to support the reconstructed history, they started taking a lot of the Moors from the North Territories to Kemet, and this is when they established Liberia. And of course, I've personally talked to the ambassador's brother in the early 90s, and so we've communicated, and I already know some of the problems with the communications that's been having with many of the Moors from here in North America, who were sent over there under the Christian Black Codes to support the guise of the hybrid Europeans to back up their so-called Columbus voyage and their so-called slave trade trafficking diaspora, most of which was fiction, because there's only about 2% of the Asiatics here that actually were from that trade. 98% of the Asiatics here are people of the land, etc. Keep that in mind.
They also established Monrovia.
That's why that's why you have Monrovia.
Monrovia.
Yeah, that's why that's the capital. Right. These are political activities, and our people think that those were actually established African countries, and the real deal, that's an implant to support the reconstructed history of the so-called Black diaspora.
So it also speaks to Dane Calloway's book that it was told to us in reverse.
Exactly.
So they rather make the world think that we came from Africa here and leave out the fact that they sent us from here to Africa, to West Africa,
exactly,
to establish those.
Exactly. To back up or to give appearance of credibility to that reconstructed paradigm. This is why you will have a lot of trolls or people trying to debate Dane, because remember they're put up because they have to maintain, because remember the strength of the hegemony operations here is important for the Aboriginal people to maintain that Black diaspora paradigm phenotype psychosis of the hegemony mind control system. So they will defend their own enslavement. Right. So this is another reason why we're sharing this information, because many of our people have been subjected to that mentality, and many of them, not knowing that they don't know, still defend that paradigm to their own injury. And this is also why a lot of our people don't know friend from enemy. They will also often attack other nation states who are actually doing certain things in the political arena that actually help us, and many of our people will counter or will argue against them, not knowing that they're being thrown a life raft. There's another reason why we're sharing this information. because our people have been feeding or funding their own enslavement, thinking that they're a party to a nation state that is really a private corporation that's in treaty, i.e., to actually subjugate them to protect the hegemony operations of unum sanctum, which is falsely, or the cover story is white supremacy. And of course, their conquest of the Moors of the Western Hemisphere is called the Black Diaspora. Both of those are fictional cover stories for actually the doctrine of discovery operations in the Western Hemisphere, known as the military operation of Christopher Columbus discovering America, total fiction. That's the military title for the operations of the hegemony operations of unum sanctum. Now, and I wish to call attention to the Senate of this treaty, because of the threat of this treaty, which was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine, and it throws a powerful white light upon the conflict between the monarchical government and the government by the people. The Holy Alliance, under the influence of Metternich, the premier of Austria, in 1822, issued this remarkable secret document. So this is what all your politicians have been hiding from you. They have it in their congressional records, and logically, they don't want you aware of this. They want you marching and praying on your own land, asking them for some kind of moral restoration, or some kind of vote under the Whigmore party of the Cotton Whigs and the Conscience Whigs, known as the Democrat and Republican Party, which were never separate. They're actually conjoined operations under the Unum Sanctum and the Treaty of Verona, pretending to have what you call separate parties and making the people think that their votes counted relative to the constitutional operations, and their vote is actually to the de facto government body, de facto under the idea that the people sanctioned them, and the people don't know that they're actually voting for the conquerors. This is American Diplomatic Code 1778 to 1884, Volume 2, Elliott, page 179. Secret Treaty of Verona. The undersigned specially authorized to make some additions to the Treaty of the Holy Alliance, after having exchanged their respective credentials, have agreed as follows. Article 1. The high contracting powers, being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxims of the sovereignty of the people with the high divine right, engage mutually in the most solemn manner to use all of their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent its being introduced in those countries where it is not yet known. Article 2. As it cannot be doubted that the liberty of the press is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations to the detriment of those princes, the high contracting parties promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it, not only in their own states, but also in the rest of Europe. Article 3. Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep the nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes, the high contracting parties declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, so intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations. Article 4. The situation of Spain and Portugal unite unhappily all the circumstances to which the treaty has particular reference. The high contracting parties, in confiding to France the care of putting an end to them, engaged to assist her in the manner which may the least compromise them with their own people and the people of France by means of a subsidy on the part of the two empires, 20 million of francs each year from the date of the signature of this treaty to the end of the war. Article 5. In order to establish in the peninsula the order of things which existed before the revolution of Cadiz, and to ensure the entire execution of the articles of the present treaty, the high contracting parties give to each other the reciprocal assurance that as long as their views are not fulfilled, rejecting all other ideas of utility or other measure to be taken, they will address themselves with the shortest possible delay to all the authorities existing in their states and to all their agents in foreign countries with the view to establish connecting tending toward the accomplishment of the objects proposed by this treaty. Article 6. This treaty shall be renewed with such changes as circumstances may give occasion for, either in a new Congress or at the court of one of the contracting parties, as soon as the war with Spain shall be terminated. Article 7. The present treaty shall be ratified, and the ratification exchanged at Paris within the space of 6 months, made at Verona the 22nd day of November, 1822. Now, that's the secret treaty of Verona. That will be found in your congressional records, volume 53, part 7, that's 64th Congress, first session, volume 53, part 7, page 67, 81, etc. And that's entered into the record, 25th of April, 1916, 3 years after they met on Jekyll Island. This is why we always remind you all that keep in mind this goes for all indigenous people, all Aboriginal people, i.e. the Moors, the Phoenicians of the land, first peoples that make up what you call in the reconstructed history, quote unquote, the indigenous tribes or the Indian tribes. These targets are you. This is again why when you see in the Treaty of Verona, you see them mention Cadiz. So Cadiz is the Moorish city from which they sail to test the longitude and the latitude grid line that's always been used under the sextant and the operations of the shipping or rudders of the trade routes that's been for thousands of years between the different parts of the empire from North America, Central America, South America, Kemet, Africa, Madagascar, etc., which were the trade routes of the takeover under the hybrid European operations that you know as the military operations of Columbus, discovering America, 1492, and as a ritual celebration of their conquest of the Moors and Moorish tribes of the Western Hemisphere, it is celebrated where they held the convention for the Whigmore Party split of 1854. And this is where you have the celebration of that same January the 1st, 1492, of the fall of the Alhambra under Boabdil, ceded to the hybrid Europeans. You'll see the celebration of what is known as the Mummers Parade every January the 1st of every fiscal year at Philadelphia, starting or assembling at 6th and Moore Street, and going west, turning 90 degrees on Broad Street, and stopping for what they would call the judgment at the Grand Lodge, which George Washington closed, etc., at Broad Street, right at the north gate of the City Hall battleground, where was a battleground. And this is where you will see, when you walk within the parapet of the North Tower, you will see in a grave pit the original cornerstone in a grave pit. That's what that represents, the fall of the Moors of the Western Hemisphere. And George Washington closed the lodge that you will see right across the street from the entry of the north gate of City Hall. And at the center of the City Hall, after 4 gates, you'll see the East Gate, the West Gate, North Gate, South Gate, and in the center of the courtyard, you will see the Zodiac Law of the Moors, and that people walk across. The original has actually brass indicators of sister cities all around the world, but that's covered up now with tar, and then you'll see them painting the Zodiac Law over top of the original that's actually underneath that cover to hide the real history and the trade routes that you'll see, that you won't see now, that originally indicated sister cities all around the world, including Cairo, Memphis, etc., of Lower Egypt. And so they don't want the people to know the real history of the Thai around the world. I yield the floor for the moment, Dr. G. You can share with us. Thank you for your good mix here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. The volume isn't working. Are you sure? You can't hear? Can I get a couple of ones in the chat if you can hear? Is our volume okay? All right, that's enough. Thank you. Whoever said the volume isn't working, your volume isn't working. Okay. I wanted to share a little bit of from this book, y'all. Nothing is true, everything is a lie. Because a lot of what Gracie, what you've been sharing is actually, going over it, and as you say, we do it redundantly, but there's always somebody who, for them, it's new or it's a refresher. But the interesting thing about this book is that it was written by a modern European, right? So a lot of times, when we say stuff, it's just us trying to justify who we are versus who they say we are. But in chapter 4 of this particular book, it's called Washington ACDC Inc. And there are 15 points in here, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read the part that talks about what you've talked about with in terms of the birth certificate. And it says here, let me okay. AD 1836, registration of births, deaths, and marriages, which you've gone over. The civil registration of births and deaths commenced 1st of July, 1837. From this date, His Majesty was to provide a proper office in London or Westminster to be called the General Register Office, for keeping a register of all births, deaths, and marriages of His Majesty's subjects in England. When a child is born in a hospital ward, and they have it all caps, estate, under inferior Roman law, 3 sister QV trusts are created upon certain presumptions specifically designed to deny forever the child any rights of real property, any rights to be free, and any rights to be known as a living, breathing man or woman, but rather as a dead legal fiction or a creature or animal / chattel.
Now you understand. Now, for those who know, and if those who have a background, know that the United States colonies belong to England, and that the corporate states are those colonies.
Okay, so I continue. The birth certificate is a title to your soul and proof of ownership by the Holy See, SEE, the claim of right, and the first express trust named Unum Sanctum, which is the core of the Holy See's ownership of your soul. Every birth certificate is a financial instrument lodged in the Vatican Bank. The Vatican and its franchises hold all titles to all our bodies, including copyright to our given names, our baptismal records, our souls, our property, our land deeds, mining claims, patents, trademarks, signatures, automobiles, and more. The list goes on and on. Look at, quote unquote, your birth certificate signed by the county registrar, an officer of the probate court, issued in the all caps name of a dead person, quote unquote, dead person, numbered as a bond and issued on bond paper. The IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, converted all your private accounts to the ownership of the estate and trust IMF created in your name and moved the estate offshore, as you talked about, to Puerto Rico, where you and your assets supposedly came under the foreign maritime jurisdiction of the United Kingdom minor. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, claims that it owns all your bank accounts. You are not obliged to register your children, but if you do, it is at this point that you create a legal entity or a person, all caps. You are handing ownership of that all caps person over to a foreign entity, the crown, and the government seizes the all caps person under maritime law, and it becomes their chattel property. Birth certificates are used as collateral to float bonds for loans, as you've been told for years by Grand Sheik. The moment the birth certificate is created, the government registers it with the Department of Trade, Industry, and Commerce, and the Department of Trade, Industry, and Commerce notifies the Treasury, and the Treasury then takes out a loan from the bank. The Treasury uses that loan to purchase bonds from the Department of Trade, Industry, and Commerce, and the Treasury then invests the sales proceeds in the stock/bond market. The Treasury issues certificates in the form of bonds, sometimes prison bonds, notes, and bills, using the bonds as securities. You want to say? Right.
Now, when you see that now, all right, this is back to people who don't really understand how the politics work. When we be telling them over the years, 55 Water Street, this is where like your local politicians will bundle all mortgages, even traffic tickets, on what you call a bi-weekly basis, and then they bundle them. Those bundles are called derivatives. That's what goes to 55 Water Street. That's what goes on the stock market. And when you understand what's happening in the world today, those bonds, which is actually were under the Unum Sanctum, they declared the people dead, and also the Bishopric of Rome, headed by the Pope, who controls the global world trust, etc. This is the foundation of the abuse and the abuses that are imposed upon the Aboriginal people that you have been falsely calling racism and prejudice. That's actually the hegemony operations that you just identified, Dr. G. And it's only showing you, so the birth certificate, the marriage certificate, and all that's licenses and everything, CDLs, all of those are bottomry instruments that we've been telling people for decades. That's what they are. That's the proper name for all of those instrumentalities. This is why you will see over the years when Moors or conscious Moors started doing their own documents, claiming their own estates and claiming their Elam Bay and claiming their reversion of estate, while you see the gangs of New York have been systematically sent out to intimidate them, even murdering some of them to intimidate them because it interrupts the operations of the Sister QV trust of the bond systems, etc. That's why you see that kickback, and you'll see even a lot of people who are even on our side of the nation who work for them secretly or who are members of some of their societies. You'd see them constantly trolling and telling the people that those Moorish documents would get you in trouble. That's what that's really all about, where you'll see the members of the Circle Church and Chancery of the British Accredited Registry would go after them and steal their houses, their cars, and everything in order to suppress them, to stop them from what you call generating or making a living, in order to force them to subdue back under the street operations of the Christian Black Codes. And this is why you see in the Christian Black Codes, you'll see around Article 5 and Article 6, where the hospital and the corporate state determine the fate of the child based on the condition of the mother. And logically, with this human trafficking being the established rule of the operations at North America, they covered up with the argument of racism and prejudice, so that the people from generation would argue that the complexion of their skin made them poor, rather than it was actually unum sanctum operations enforced by the Jesuit army known as the United States or the U.S. Democracy Army Operations, etc., funded by what you call the defense funds. And this is why the so-called Department of the Defense contractors are so numerous, and why that so much finance goes to that every year in the billions, and they call it national defense. It's actually they're defending unum sanctum operations. And this is again why we went into law, to show the people that these courts operating on the land are all de facto, and that the government operations of the Democratic and the Republican Party are actually cotton wigs and conscience wigs pretending to be separate, but to exercise or to maintain the operations of the secret Treaty of Verona, etc., for colonial operations in the Western Hemisphere. And their yearly celebration is called the Mummers Parade at Philadelphia, assembled at 6th and Moore Street. All this is symbolic, but it's all the real politics. There you go.
Okay. Continuing on. The executors or administrators of the higher estate willingly and knowingly convey the beneficial entitlements of the child back to the birth certificate as beneficiary into the first Sister QV trust in the form of a registry number by registering the name, thereby also creating the corporate all caps person and denying the child any rights as an owner of real property. They claim the baby as chattel to the estate. The slave baby contract is then created by honoring the ancient tradition of either having the ink impression of the baby's feet onto the live birth record, which is what I have of mine, or a drop of its blood, as well as tricking the parents to signing the baby away through the deceitful legal meanings on the live birth record, which is a promissory note converted into a slave bond, sold to the private reserve bank of the estate, and then conveyed into a second and separate CQV, Sister QV trust, per child, owned by the bank. When the promissory note reaches maturity and the bank is unable to quote unquote seize the slave child, a maritime lien is lawfully issued to quote unquote salvage the lost property. All these are maritime
The people are referred to as property.
Right, the lost property, and is monetized as currency issued in a series of Sister v. Trust. Claim the child's soul via the baptismal certificate. Since 1540 and the creation of the Sister v. Trust Act, deriving its power from the papal bull of Roman cult leader Pope Paul III in 1540. When a child is baptized and a baptismal certificate is issued, the parents have gifted, granted, and conveyed the soul of the baby to the quote-unquote third Sister v. Trust, owned by Roman cult, which has held this valuable property in its vaults ever since. Since 1815, this third crown of the Roman cult and third Sister v. Trust, representing ecclesiastical property, has been managed by the BAR, the British Accreditation Registry, as the reconstituted gala responsible as grim reapers for reaping the souls. Know you know. Now, the thing that I felt that was I've read that was interesting here, Grand Sheik, is the fact that they have put this slave mentality that we came from slaves and we are descendants.
That's the animal husbandry.
We're descendants of slaves. But when you listen to what I said and what their premise is for creating the bonds from the birth certificates, the slavery is in that action.
Because those are the bonds.
Right. This is the bonds of slavery. It's not your ancestors came over here in bonds and chains from Africa. It's that they put us all in them via the birth certificate. And the ones that were free were the ones prior to there being such an action as a birth certificate, it appears to me.
Now, when you put it in context, Dr. G, this is why with people, when they start looking at the record and looking at the extortion and the corrupting and the short cycle of the Bureau of Freedmen and Abandoned Lands, now you understand why they don't say that the Bureau of Freedmen and Abandoned Lands. They'll just say the Freedmen's Bureau, because they don't want people to know that we are the people of the land. That's why they won't use the full title. Now, keep in mind, when they're talking about the Freedmen's Bureau, the official title of the Bureau of Freedmen and Abandoned Lands, because they've been promoting the narrative that we are not the people of the land, when in fact we are the Americans who have been conquered by foreign Europeans who claim through their corporate operations to be Americans. This is why when you see them doing any what you would call narrative relative to current politics, you'll see them say U.S. and America in the same sentence, but separate, as if America is a country. And then they tie U.S. to it, because remember, that's mental operations. So the people keep thinking that the U.S. is America, when in fact the U.S. is the private corporation occupying America under unum sanctum operations, whereas the true Americans are declared dead. This is the foundation of the operations of the Christian Black codes imposed on the Moors, i.e. known as the indigenous people of the Maghreb or the Western Hemisphere. And this is why they themselves claim to be the West, i.e. and white people, 1854, in order to claim the sovereignty of the people, because they're claiming the rights of property and the rights of sovereignty of the people. So people need to know that when they claim to be white people, that's actually what they're saying. But the people who don't know law don't know that that's what that means. When you see the hybrid Europeans operating in the Western Hemisphere, whenever they claim themselves white people, it's a legal term claiming to be the sovereign God or ruler of the land. And our people don't know that. They think it means complexion. And it's important for them to know that they're dealing with unum sanctum operations. They're not dealing with an attitude. And again, this is why we're reminding them that both the governing body and the court system operating under the British Accredited Registry are all de facto, not some of them. All of them are de facto.
Yeah, if you happen to engage an attorney and to go to represent you
You gave up the
in
birthright.
in a situation or a case, you have to know that the both sides are allies.
Exactly.
So
You're just a cow.
they're acting
You're
on
a cow on the block.
behalf of the bar
Auction
of the crown. So you're not being, you're really not being given
Your rights are being auctioned between them.
Yeah.
They're debating entry into the vouchers, into the Sister QV trust, how much they'll share with each other, then how much they'll allow you to have, not in monetary value, but in currency. Because remember, the currency is the operations of the vouchers. This is the reason why they have promoted the misinformation among the masses that currency equals money. Currency is not money. Currency is simply the allonge records of entries into the Sister QV trust. That's all it is. That is represented as currency, not unlike the electrical system of the nervous system of the being, including the currency of the water itself under admiralty or maritime law.
So I have some words here too that are in this book that, since he's talking about maritime law, admiralty law words, examples, well quoted as you said, the Holy See, which is spelled SEE, but also means SEA.
Exactly.
SEA, because the words the spelling words that cast the spell. So you got birth certificate, BIR, and you got birth BER certificate. Like if you in the ship, the birth, the records. You have citizenship,
yes.
14th Amendment citizen. You have leadership. You have withdrawal. These are admiralty law words. Withdrawal, currency,
exactly.
Liquid assets.
Exactly.
Your account has been frozen.
Yes.
Bail.
Yes.
Bankruptcy.
Yes.
Bar examination.
Yes.
Seal, SEAL.
Yes.
Court dock, harbor dock.
Yes.
Survivorship, cash flow, liquidation, floating a bond.
Mm-hmm.
I have my head above water.
Yes.
Apprenticeship,
yes.
Bail bond.
Yes.
Bankruptcy law.
Yes.
Disbarment, sidebar, your worship, floating your company, deposit, bank, the river bank, loan sharks, frozen assets, bank balance, bailiff, bar, discharge, ownership, name in all caps. And then a lot of things with ship, ambassadorship, authorship, battleship, censorship, championship, companionship,
yes.
craftsmanship, a whole bunch. You know the words with the ship on it. All of these are
relationship.
Scholarship, sponsorship, worship, workmanship. Yes. These are all admiralty law words. And someone asked, I think Brother Amir, what book I'm reading from, and I'm reading from this book, which is Nothing is True, Everything is a Lie by James W. Lee. If you get this book, please get the color version. I think I gave away a black and white version
for people that came to.
But you want to get the color version because it is full of pictures, color pictures and charts, and they're better viewed in the color than they are in the black and white. This is called Nothing is True, Everything is a Lie. Yes. And I think I put something out about this maybe maybe a month ago, to say there is a web site that you can go to, and if you got the ink, you can download. He makes a lot of this stuff available for free. So.
I want to take note on this while you are speaking at.
Okay.
Now, remember when we mentioned in the city Verona, and they talked about Portugal and Al-Andalus, etc., Spain, right? And the city of Cadiz. Now, when they reconstruct history, they tell you that America's Vespucci sailed from the city of Cadiz. So keep in mind, that's a Moorish city. So when they conquered the Moors, this is why they made up the story that Columbus discovered America, when the real deal was they was taking over the trade routes, etc. And so that's important for you to have your concepts together. No different than, as an example, when myself and my brother was traveling last night, right? We were coming down from upper state New York. And we traveled past that area which they call Washington's Crossing, right? At the Delaware and stuff like that, right? And they made up the story about where Washington and his troops with, just socks and stuff on in the wintertime, went up the river so they could cross near Trenton and come back down to fight the British and all. Remember, when you start looking at that story, logistically it was an impossibility, but it's a glorification of the operations, etc. Because you can see, even with the terrain, even today, even with all the highways and things like that, it was a logistical impracticality or impossibility. We were talking about that yesterday, just as a point of reference. But keep this in mind. The major thing that people need to comprehend in the nature of the shared information is that our people don't know that they don't know, and they didn't know that they didn't know. Because the reference point that people have been coming from has been reconstructed history. And so when they try to revert to reasoning to look at the politics or our sojourn in this operation with hybrid Europeans here operating at North America, our reference points would always be from the reconstructed history, not knowing that we were coming from a reconstruction or an artificially created history.
Yeah, I want to. But yeah, so this book, no rights are reserved in this book, meaning you
can use it.
You can use it as you.
That means it's
when you open up the front, you'll see where it says no copyrights reserved. Because the man, and he's a modern European, wants this information out.
Keep this in mind, Dr. G. Remember what I said years ago? And remember, Prophet Null said this. He said he's going to make the European tell the truth.
Right.
Now, when you look at the dynamics that's taking place, and you'll see information like this has been coming out in the last.
And this is like 461 pages, 460 some pages.
But what does this also indicate to you, Dr. G, too?
That
number one, most Europeans already knew this information.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said before, the reason why you see a lot of hybrid Europeans starting to expose information, because they weren't supposed to get thrown under the bus. And when they started when it became indisputably obvious that, quote unquote, the Circle Church and Chancery members were dissolving or sacrificing the middle class to survive themselves. And this is why you see literature like this coming out. Not that we haven't been telling people this information for decades.
Right.
And when you start looking at the politics, it becomes more apparent today.
We, the people, are pissed off.
It becomes more apparent today.
Folks are like, mad as hell and not taking it anymore.
Yeah.
Seeing the light finally.
And then what you're seeing is that rather than what you call loose statements, they're now starting to get into documented and researchable history or politics and civics that people have a reference point, and when you look at all the decades that, the work of Noble Ali and those who have been aiding or working to help restore the birthright have been heavily criticized. And as a matter of fact, they would call it cult, and that is a false and everything like that. Now, the hybrid Europeans are the middle class who've been being dissolved, and clearly they can't dispute it anymore. They can't blame the loss of their jobs and their positions on Mexicans and other immigrants and things like that, because it's apparent that the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, who they refer to as themselves as the elite, or have cast the middle class under the bus, and that the anarchy is actually within the structured government itself, even though they're blaming it on the people. And this is one of the reasons why you will see when they to cover up the collapse of the bond system, you see they created what they refer to as sanctuary cities and start bringing people in from other political jurisdictions, and then creating a bunch of havoc so they can justify the closing of stores. Remember we said before, because the deal of it is when the other nation states stopped accepting the treasury bonds for payment, everything, it was only a matter of time that you would have a feedback loop, and that malls would start closing, and then it'll start accelerating as it goes along, and they can't hide it anymore. You know, not unlike you start seeing trucking companies close down. Why? Because they don't have any goods to carry. And when they do have goods to carry, it's not worth their time, because they're working as slaves themselves, because the cost of the fuel and all the regulations that the corporate state put on the trucking, and then they deny, as an example, many of the truckers, what in the last 10 years or so, one of the major complaints of truckers themselves was like when they start going into California and areas like that, they put on so many restrictions, and when they couldn't rate them no more, they start disallowing them to drive trucks that were, over 10 years old and stuff like that. And so you had people that were still paying for trucks, because those trucks are very expensive, and they couldn't do business because they needed to buy a new truck, and they weren't finished paying for the trucks they had, and they couldn't generate enough finance to pay for their existing debt. That's more new trucks. But again, most of them, or many of them, it never dawned on them that the politicians are actually raping them, because many of them think or thought that these people are their quote unquote government, their de facto. Their issue was and is to drain the resources of the people. The relationship is absolutely parasitic. It's not an attitude. And this is why it's difficult for people who don't understand the history and the politics to wrap their heads around that they're actually being sacrificed socially, economically, and politically for generations by persons that they thought was quote unquote their government. They don't know what de facto, that's why they don't teach law. They don't know, and still many of them don't know that these people are de facto. So they have expectations of service from these people, not recognizing that the role is really reversed. The people are servants to them. They're subjects. But the people think that these people are public servants, and it's sort of like the turkey on a platter, kind of argue about the temperature of the oven. Mm-hmm. You understand? Or what are we having for dinner? and it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality. And because people don't know that the Whigmore Party never really split, it was a cover up for the overthrow of the Republic.
Question. My sister Denivia has asked this for a minute. Are citizens of the Commonwealth, i.e. Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands, de jure forms of government?
No, all of that's de facto. And this is why they will say in the public record that they're called U.S. protectorates. Write that down.
Okay.
And the same thing with like, for instance, you'll hear them calling Now, when some of the brothers in around 1952 was resisting the hegemony operations, they jailed a lot of them, and some of them they murdered them in their houses and stuff like that in Boricane. So Boricane, you will call the rich port that the hybrid Europeans refer to it as, and the rich port means the Puerto Rico means the rich port. That's not really the land or the people. The people are Taino and Arawak. They're Boricane, um, and the hybrid Europeans with their annexation operations of Unum Sanctum and the doctrine of discovery renamed the people Puerto Ricans, which is a tag of operations. It's really not who the people are. Keep that in mind. That means rich port. That means one of the ports that the hybrid Europeans raped. And that was the message to the hybrid Europeans in
found.
Europe of one of the ports where they found a lot of gold, where they murdered a lot of the matriarchs and murdered a lot of the women. Because keep in mind, much of the gold and silver of the wealth of the family, commonly in among the tribes here, is carried among the women, and because they murdered so many women, cut their heads off to steal the gold, because many of the tradition had been where many of the rings of gold was around the women's necks or around their arms, and it wasn't like this watch or something where you have a band where you take it off or where it loops off. No, it was molded onto their bodies. They would wash it with it still on their bodies, and so they would cut their heads off and cut their arms off to steal the gold, and they sent the message back to the other hybrid Europeans: damn, this is a rich port. And this is why the people of the Carib, of that particular island of Boricane, have been called Puerto Rico, or meaning rich port. Keep in mind that was a political message. That's not who the people were then, and it's not who the people are now. You need to know the history.
Let me see. How do we protect ourselves from these entities when they are attacking many of the indigenous people for exposing them and standing up for righteousness and our rights?
This is starting with ending the sleep, because remember, even this is one of the reasons why it has always been an operation of the members of the Circle Church and Chancery to disarm all our Aboriginal people, in contradistinction to the treaties and the Constitution. Because remember, the people have a right to bear arms. But you notice that they will lock our people up for bearing arms, just our people, and then will murder them in the street, or go to their houses and murder them just because they have arms, which they have a right to, because it's a threat to the hegemony operations. People need to understand that they're waging war on us. It's not an attitude. And the fact that our people keep voting for or trying to participate in the operation is a deliberate misleading and an implication that the people are sanctioning their own enslavement. And so you can't, when the people themselves keep believing in the system, they themselves keep supporting it. No different than as we're sharing this information tonight, which is the real history and real politics and true jurisprudence. Many of the opposition will come from our own people. Mm-hmm. And so the deal of it is, if we don't change the state of mind of our people, we can't change their position, because they themselves are supporters of their own enslavement. Mm-hmm. You got to begin, how do we stop the stink in the house? Clean up. How do we start getting our people in unity? You got to, like Drew Ali said, in order to change the people, you must change their literature. And this is again in relationship to the operations here. Why, when Drew Ali had left his headquarters traveling, they tore down the press that he had established for the Moors in the Western Hemisphere, which is the Moorish Monitor and he said our press is the most powerful weapon in the hand of our group today. And the Moorish guide. People need to understand the hybrids have been waging war on us, and they've been hiding it under the guise of racism and prejudice, and then they would assign 14th Amendment marching leaders, or what they would call black leadership or Negro leadership, whose job was to keep our people in a passive mentality to march and pray, but never to know they're on their own land, etc., and then try to be part of the U.S. corporation operations or the unum sanctum operations under the dead title of the Negro Act. This is where that all has its origin. And this is why the civil rights operations of 1954-55 has its origin at that particular time. And you can see it's only promoted amongst the Aboriginal people. It's not promoted amongst other people, just the Aboriginal people. That's a targeted operations of animal husbandry training. And our people to this day, most of them don't know that that's secret Treaty of Verona operations. This is again why we shared some of this stuff with you.
But there's a lot out there, and I know a lot of folks are. I mentioned to you about the folks being concerned about the new currency. What does that mean? For allegedly, supposedly, the value of it'll take 55 US dollars to equal one of the whatever currency that's being developed. And y'all, I've got this up because I want y'all to know, especially those of you who travel to come here for Friday. We will not be having a live civics class at House of Reawakening Minds in the month of September. The next one will be in October. Just wanted to let you all know that, especially since we have folks coming from everywhere. So we just want to make sure you know that. But yeah, folks are concerned about what does that mean for us and our purchasing power.
All right,
so
this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Let me update you all so that you all don't be confused. They're crashing the system deliberately because the bonds are no longer accepted by other nation states. This is why every time something goes wrong, they will say Russia did it or China did it. That's a diversion of the fact that they're no longer accepting U.S. Treasury bonds or payment of international trade goods. And so they're covering it up by diversion or by proxy. It also has much to do with the war in Ukraine, because that was one of the operations where they were laundering finance for the quote unquote Department of Defense for the politicians and the so-called political leaders around the world who are actually pawns for the British operations of the Circle Church and Chancery that you often mentioned with what they call the hitmen operations over the decades. That's what our finance has been going.
Hitman, yeah.
All right, now this is again why you see them sending from 40 to 80 billion so-called dollars to Ukraine, and sending all kind of billions and billions of so-called weaponry. The real deal of it is that converts into the contractors' payoff, and the contractors pay the politicians. That has always been the system. That's why they must have the continuous wars. And they've got to create an enemy to justify that constant highest cost of taxation, which is actually an extortion operations under the Whiggamore Party via the United States Corporation Company through the Democratic and Republican cover operations for the theft or the what you call the extortion of the American people. And it's just like just that the middle class of the Europeans in the process are being dissolved, which is why you see some of them starting to expose some of the truth that we've been telling the people for decades. However, at the same time, until that becomes their own reality, most of the people themselves will continue to support the institutions that actually are put in place to maintain the black code systems that they themselves have been suffering from, including the General Education Board psychosis of the animal husbandry, which is a public document. It's not even a secret document. But of course, while our people are talking about the children can't read, the parents themselves won't even read the philosophy page of the General Education Board, which they admit what they're doing to your children. And yet the parents keep on delivering their children to them and then complaining about their miseducation in the next sentence. So again, back to even some of the questions that came up on the chat. The people, what do we do? If you don't wake these people up, they're self-sacrifice, because the intention, i.e. by the hybrid Europeans in accord with Rex 84, is to encroach, and then devour these people. They just don't accept that these people intend to genocide these people out. They still don't believe that what you're seeing is slow walk genocide, even though it's documented. Militarily, they just call it encroachment.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on.
And a lot of stuff is going to be, and because this stuff is accelerating to the degree that people want to try to start saving their families from this abuse, etc. This is why we're showing them that the court systems are de facto, and why there's no justice in the courts, because they're not courts. They're human trafficking venues, and they've been funded by the people themselves through taxation. And then the people won't use the Constitution or treaty to get out of that status, which we've been telling them again, over and over again, enforce the Constitution. And they start saying, oh, that's that Moorish thing going to get you in trouble. Well, here you go. And they're liquidating your estates as we speak. Right now, as we speak. And then as soon as some of you start waking up, they're going to close these banks right in your face and steal what you have left. You're having right now, as we speak, the most high and accelerated car and house repossessions right now ever in history. If you don't believe it, go to auction houses. You'll see dealers even taking new cars off their lots to auction because they know what's coming. You see what else happened this week, right? And we've been telling people this for years, Dr. J. In California territory, and most apparent in Florida, some parts of Texas, Louisiana territory, past week, because they already knew the energy weapons were used for the storm and stuff, right? Insurance companies, about 4 or 5 of them, dropped everybody's accounts or policies within a few weeks before the storm came in. So now all these people, businesses and everything that had insurance policies don't have it. You think that's not going to have an effect on the housing market? I think it will. You think it won't have a domino effect? I think it will. And you're going to see more middle-class Europeans backing up what we've been telling you all for decades, because they weren't supposed to be thrown under the bus. See, all of these black codes policies were supposed to be directed only at us. But now that the middle class is being dissolved and it's clear and they can't refute it, you're going to see middle-class Europeans picking up the fight. Meanwhile, a lot of people, as we've been telling you over the decades, are going to be destroyed in the process of the economic collapse. It was and is inevitable. This is why we've always said we've never tried to build or present the illusion that we're trying to save the people. We're trying to save the people that want to be saved.
There you go.
Do you understand? And the deal of it is, The reality is
Not
that they're
everyone.
waging war on us. They've always been waging war. It's not an attitude. And people thinking that these people didn't plan to physically remove them are naive.
Well, it's about that time, y'all. But I do have a couple of announcements. Do not leave. You know, some of y'all leave as soon as as soon as I want to tell them an announcement, they want to leave. But don't leave. Give us like 5 minutes because we're already over the 2 hour mark. So give me like 5 minutes to share this. One of the things I want to say is you may have noticed that there wasn't any. I wasn't running a lot of banners for other people today. I was just letting the ones that basically we have. I don't even think I ran my own, but we want you all who have businesses. We really, really, really are asking that you all go to to our website. Yeah, to go to our website, which is right here, showing it to you. I don't know if you see it really big, but on our website, and there is a let me see, I can't even read it there, but up here at the top, there's one that says marketplace or market something. I really look, I can't even see it, Grand Sheik. I think it says business marketplace. Yeah, business marketplace. We'll see it up here. We are offering you all the opportunity to actually what is it to here we are. Let me get back here. We are offering you the opportunity to get for $10 a month to be able to go to sign up so that you can have an ad, a link to your website, and all of that right here on our page. For instance, when you click on Business Marketplace, it gives you information. I hope you're seeing that about it. We only have, I think, maybe one of our people that we've been doing the thing who have come on so far. But for $10 a month, it's networking, partnership, new revenue streams. How to get started is right here. It's actually $20 to get started because there's this $10 setup fee. We have to do all the setup for your whatever. But once you're in, for instance, here's somebody who's listed already, who has High Priestess Soul is on here. You get this an example. That's her site. She's a tarot card reader. Here's the link to her actual website. You can click right here and get to her website. So we will do all of this for you for just a donation of 10 notes a month, and you will be here. And then it'll be also, they'll be able to actually, Grand Sheik,
like a directory
search. Yeah, be able to search from a standpoint of like if you're looking for specific, like if you're looking for somebody who does XYZ, you'll be able to search like that. So please, I'm not going to be, especially if those of you, I've been running your banners under here, some of you for 2 years, we have not charged anything. So I'm not going to be running those banners anymore. So you need to go to our website. Hopefully you will, and click on that business marketplace, sign up, and you get all the instructions. And for $20 initially for the setup, $10 setup, and then 10 a month, it'll be on an auto, reoccurring payment. You can do that. The other thing that we wanted to also let you know is that we have we also have our 40/40 legacy. 40/40 legacy, and you'll see that like on the membership thing, and it's really we've the benefits for that as a member, and this you're making a recurring commitment of 40 notes a month, and so it's recurring. You're not sending it and it's coming out like an auto whatever until you cancel it. And what it's going to give you, the perks right now are 40% room rental discounts at our Marsh Inn, 20% discount on virtual and live events, exclusive videos and content, complimentary listing in the business marketplace for 6 months. So you won't even have to pay the $10 a month if you're a legacy member. Complimentary genealogy consultation, a 1-hour session with our genealogy expert. Complimentary or discounted books listed. We have a digital library and e-blast shout outs and recognition and more benefits as they become available. So we want you to take advantage. I hope you kind of saw that. I don't know if it showed up, but we want you to take advantage of some of those things that we have going on. Shout out to our webmaster, Sister LaChris.
Yes.
She's doing an awesome, excellent job in keeping you all up to date with what's going on, and you all need to, thank her because it's all her. It's all her, and we so appreciate her. She's a busy woman, but she's not too busy to do. That's her part. She's like, I love my people, and this is, so she does this for us, and we appreciate it. Again, somebody said, is this not a live class? When I said there will be no live class September, what I meant when I say live at House, it said at House of Reawakening Minds. What I'm saying to you is that there will be no, and I think I wasn't sharing the screen when I was talking about that other stuff. Anywho, so what I'm saying is, in person, anybody who comes and drives or flies to Philly or to get here, like you all do on the 4th Friday, when we're not on live here, we're live in person. Maybe I should say, there will not be an in-person civics class at the house, but I said live at the house, meaning physically you come. There will be none in September, so we don't want you all to make that trip. As a matter of fact, on the website, I think right now it's up for October. And we had an awesome session last Friday. We had young people.
Oh, yes. We
had young people there. Let me click off of this because I need to. We had young people that were on the ball, on fire. Shout out to Sister Zim for bringing her family and the others that were there. But I was so impressed by the young people and their knowledge and their standing up and going toe to toe with the Grand Sheik, and like, okay. So our mother said, I don't think you know who he is, and she said, I know who he is. But she had her piece. She wanted to, and so I was like, go ahead, child. But we love it when you come in person and come here, but not in September. We will be back, I think something like October 27th. I don't have the flyer for it, but on the 12th of this month, which is a Tuesday, we're going to have a special webinar presentation. You know, one of those off the grid ones where this is going to be seriously got to be off the grid because of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. And I am so excited that Dr. Mark Armstrong of the Ahimki Center is coming, and we're going to have a webinar that you do not listen to me. Y'all act like you all can't kill that fly. Y'all act like you don't know how to click on a link to come in when it's not on Facebook or YouTube. But it looks just like this. You'll see it the same way. We're using the same platform. It's just that we're not broadcasting out to YouTube and we're not broadcasting to Facebook or any of those others. We're keeping it in-house. We need you to come. This man, this great naturopathic doctor who's, I'm so excited because I'm going to be going down there maybe in October to the center there. You all don't want to miss Dr. Armstrong. You don't want to miss it. He's as I say, he's the bomb.com when it comes to the knowledge. He's a hypnotherapist. He's a naturopathic doctor. He has the med bed at his center. You think people want to ask about med bed? He's got one down there, right in Roswell. And so he's got all of this technology and he's an energy worker, a Reiki, Qigong master. The list goes on and on and on and on. And he's been treating some NFL and NBA
players
who took the I'm doing my arm like this. Who did this
unforgiving.
Yeah, who did this, and I mean, right now they're seeing some. You need to log on. It's going to be on the 12th. I'm going to have LaChris put it up soon so that you all can register for it. But it's going to be going forward, stuff like this. Legacy members. We need you to. We need at least 40 legacy members, and I want you to go. 40 of y'all can go. We can do a little bit more than 40, but we're not going to go. It's a small group, but it helps us, do the things that we need to do between the Moorish Inn and the actual House of Reawakening Minds. It will help us to cover the cost when there's no one there, and we still got to pay, or give, what we need to do. So we need you. We need you. We need you. You. As long as you can click it and do a 40 note or more, you can get more. Recurring, you will automatically be a legacy member. We're gonna have some of those things where, like with Dr. Mark, you can't even get in unless you are a legacy member, right? So we're going to be doing some stuff like that, sort of like the Patreon, but we're not Patreon. We're doing our own thing. And like I said, you got a business, you become a legacy member for 6 months. Your business link is up there for no additional cost. And those of you who just want to do the business marketplace, then those 10 notes that adds up. We could really use that to help us with the things that we're trying to do, and the things we're trying to maintain, and the stuff we're trying to get out from under. Some stuff, so that we can think about
more liberated.
Going back and none pro tonkin, because we now got that little piece of paper that says non-pro-tonk. So listen, y'all. Thank you for the 700 and 839 of you that I can see who are still on here. Also, we're gonna have some shirts. Y'all like this shirt? We're gonna have some shirts that be probably a little bit different, but we're gonna have shirts available, and because we are pissed off, but you can't just be pissed off though. You got to have some action be behind your righteous indignation. There's no sense in just being mad because for mad's sake, because we not mad cows. We just are coming to a place of now that we know better, how do we do better? So let the pissed off propel you into action, so that we can work together and do some stuff. I mean, we started with the coalition conversation. A lot of you are reaching out to us about coalition building. That's another reason for you to join the business marketplace, because we want to know who's out there, so we can start to patronize each other. We don't you might have a small business. You might be. I talked to a sister today. She creates silk scarves for the hair. Okay, we probably could get them cheaper at from the
own
Chinese stores or whatever, but we want to get stuff from our own folks. We that's what we really want to do. So, and we want to be able to know how and where we are, so that wherever we are, maybe we can reach out to someone who is in our circle, and we are, our so-called dollar starts to circulate within our community, and like others, it stays in there. We gotta get there. We gotta start, growing our own food and going to our own holistic practitioners. I was listening, to, and we're gonna let you go, but I was listening to Dr. Dave. I'll just say Dr. Dave, who comes, and we love him. He's a doctor of naturopathy, and he comes and he helps us with our when we have our events, and he talks about his mentor. Who is
Dr. Wyatt.
Dr. Wyatt.
Many of you will remember Dr. Wyatt.
Right, but there is I came across a video on yesterday, and I called Dr. Dave, and then when he called me back, I was too busy to talk to him, and I said, I'll call you back, and now I'm just remembering I never called him back. But I found this video of Dr. Frank Wyatt that was done 13 years ago, and Dr. Wyatt I don't know if I said it to you, but Dr. Wyatt was talking 13 years ago about the very thing that we have been going through since 2019.
Yeah.
Actually, we've been going through it before 2019. It's just that it was more subtle in the other years that they were doing. But that little 9, I wish that we had the whole thing on there, but it's like 4 little videos up there, and they're about like average about 10 minutes, 3 minutes. But he was talking, and I said that's why they ended stuff with that.
They neutralized.
That's why they did that. He was one of the naturopathic doctors, and he was one of the ones that had cures for the other stuff that they had already done. As a matter of fact, he was talking about in that particular session about H1N1 and the stuff of that, and he knew what it was, why it was, but what protocols he had. He had protocols to get rid of it. And they knew what was coming down the pike, because they don't plan things in a vacuum. They don't get up today and say, oh, maybe. No, they have 1,000-year plans, 500-year plans, 100-year plans. They got plans of where they know that they have to pass it on to their children, their successors, so that the plan would actually be carried through. We can't get together and plan nothing. We can't plan lunch.
But we don't know the politics. We keep putting our energy into the U.S. system, thinking it's a country. It's actually unum sanctum. It's still a U.S. unum sanctum. It is the U.S., but it ain't what they think it is.
Could you please list the name of your site, please? Well, here it is right here. It says it's running across the thing up to that member of our website. There it is right there. www. Not unless you want me to put it in the I could definitely type it in here. Maybe you want to be able to click it, but our site is I think you're talking to us. I hope. House of www. I think that's a comma instead of a period. houseofreawakeningminds.com. So that should be, hopefully that's a live link that can be clicked on. But please join, become a member. It's free to become a member of the site. But then we have some things on there that we thank you, Faith Ford. But we have some things that we're trying to get better with by adding some just some perks and things. And as we get them, then we will see www.houseofreawakeningminds.com. I think that's right. And yes, Grand Sheik and I were drinking. We were drinking. I juiced a whole watermelon today, a seeded watermelon.
Yeah, including the rind.
I peeled it, and then I didn't peel. I didn't do the rind. The rind is the rind's in the bag because I'm going to do the rind separately. Oh. But so I did a watermelon, pineapple, cucumber, and ginger. So I made 4 gallons. That was good too. 4 gallons, y'all. So that's what we were drinking. Right. But listen, thank you for spending some time with us, and those of you who have stuck around for the afterglow. We're gonna call this the afterglow.
Go over the video and mark some of those cases down. Do some research.
Yeah.
And in addition, as we had mentioned the last time, also look up the Clearfield Doctrine of Pennsylvania. That'll really wake you up in relationship to the de facto operations.
Yeah. Thank you, Samaya. I hope I say it right. Samaya Beg. Thank you so much. And yes, Sister Roxy, I juiced cantaloupe and watermelon last week, but this time it was cantaloupe, pineapple. I mean watermelon, pineapple, cucumber, and ginger. Yeah. But thank you so much. We are going to go because a lot of us haven't figured out how to keep our companies in private state jurisdiction. Oh, what do you think of? I don't want to miss this quick. What do you think of private member associations? A lot of us haven't figured out how to keep our companies in the private state jurisdiction.
This everything because they're de facto. They've been breaching everyone. This is why it's important for us to pay attention to what the nations are doing around the world and understand why it's been necessary for them to do what they're doing. And don't go against it because it's in your interest.
Well, but there are some
meaning that if they're as long as they're in power, they're going to undermine everything you do. But doing what you do and making public your rebuttal is the wise thing to do.
For those who are not sure how to establish your business presence, there is, if you text me, I will send you the email of someone that I know can look at your structure and
the best that you can
and
under the circumstances.
to put you in the best light of how you should be
operating
outside of, and if you want that, just say, business or send me a text that says business, or y'all should know my number now, 302-345-0500.
And again, this is why
and I will text you. I will text you the link for
that directory.
Well, it's not a directory. It's
but I'm directing them to.
Yeah, it's an individual that I know that's their expertise, and they are more, and they have 20 plus years experience with this. So if you're starting one, or if you already have one and you need to restructure it, because now that you have the knowledge of who you are and that you should be doing business in a different way, then I'll make that referral for you. So I think that's it. Let me just make sure there's no more. Much love to you, Sister Fario. Stay aware, look in the peace and love, 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 love. Yep. So, number to text. All right. Let me put something up here that has a phone number in. This one is for the for war, for the sisters. Yeah. But see, the same number for war, 302-345-0500. I don't think I ran that one. Is the same number that you can text and ask for business. Just put business or something there, and I'll know that you want to be referred for your business structure. Yeah, like business structure. So I think that's it. 222 is a good time to stop. And we love you back, and we are leaving. How about that, Grand Sheik?
Peace and love.
Yes. We appreciate you. We appreciate each and every one of y'all. Y'all, if you didn't, before you leave, please give us a thumbs up. Please, pretty please. It's 688 and 1111. Whatever that number adds up. Could you just give us some thumbs up?
Remember, YouTube and Facebook never give us credit for the real numbers.
I know that. So please just give us a like. We're not monetized, and we're not trying to be, because we want to be able to say what we want to say. I don't think we're the kind that I don't know if they put commercials on our thing, but we don't get anything if they do.
They do.
Oh yeah, but we're not monetized, y'all. So we only get what you all give when you all support us, and so that's just how it is. I'm not worried about it, but we've been doing okay just because you all have thought about us from time to time. So, but like I said, please become a legacy member. Please become a legacy member. We need at least 40 of you all to do that. We've got a few, but we need at least 40 of y'all to do that. And you just click and you give a recurring donation of $40, 40 notes or more. And because we don't want to limit you, but we need it to be at least 40. We appreciate that. Good, Grand Sheik. Every time I click back here, I see some more comments. Mine says 83 likes. Weird. Ain't that something? We need to have what's the number for the book? Just go back and read the look at the video, run it back, we get ready in, and you can get all those numbers. Love you, Slim. Yeah. What's going on with Brother Lamont? We're just waiting for him to come home.
In a day or two, you'll hear.
Soon he'll be home.
I'm going to be the first one he contacts soon as he gets out the POW camp.
I don't know what you mean. What about Trump? What about Trump? I don't know what that means. I don't know what about Trump means.
Good cop, bad cop. Look at it that way.
Yeah. So, thank you. Okay. I should. Is there a date? Let me see. Okay, so whatever. Okay, whenever you join up as, and this is the last thing I'll say. Whenever you sign up to be a 4040 member, whatever date, say it's today's the first. If you were to click on there today on the first and start your first $40 donation, it will come out recurring every first. It will be the same date. If you do it on the 15th, it'll always come out on the 15th. You do it on the 8th, it'll be at the 8th. Whatever date number you started, that's when it'll come out. So yeah, just so you know. Thank you, Frank Briggs Bey, for that 21 gun salute. We appreciate that. We certainly do. But I don't know about you, Grand Sheik, but I'm tired. So I still got to take you, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. All righty, y'all. We are out of here. We are out of here. Yes.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living the lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living the lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.